Asha. Good evening.
So today, I think let's pick up something very, very topical, the issue of exams, then the stress and the worry that go with it, right?
Sure.
Do you
I
think
was,
you would like
I was,
to give the topic a good name?
yeah, so I was about to say the four-letter word in our lives, EXAM.
EXAM, right? But that we left long back when we passed out of college, right? However, in your life and my life, I think it continued throughout our professional career also because the entire cycle of being a principal was from one exam to another exam to another exam into another exam, right? Much as we all realized that these exams were not really taking us forward in the
True.
sense of delivering quality education in the children. However, we also did not have an alternative to the exam system. Hence,
Yes.
we continue to feed into the exam system, make it legitimate and valid, and build all our systems around it. And so, unfortunately, because I think I was very acutely conscious that we are not doing a great service to the children by getting them to move from one exam to another exam to the other exam. But however, I also did not step aside or step out and create something different that could have enabled the children differently.
So I think when you look at the range of stakeholders who are impacted by exams, students, parents, teachers, administrators, principals, and educational leaders, thought leaders, everyone has had their view about examinations. Everyone has given their view about what should be the best way or not the best way to test students. But unfortunately, we don't see too much in the way of exam reform. As you mentioned, we try in small ways to kind of ease the pressure, especially for students and especially for perhaps students in the younger grades, where a formal way of examination doesn't lend itself well to actually track student progress. But as we move up the grades and we approach the high stakes exams, unfortunately, I believe in our country with such large student numbers, marks and exams are the only filter for them to move forward to a certain program or to make a choice of a certain career. Unfortunately,
Yeah, what I think here is we are wedded to misery. All right. Now, if I give you an alternative, what will happen? I mean, I will not be miserable anymore. I will actually be happy, and my child will be happy and singing and dancing his way through childhood. Oh my God, what a loss of purpose for me, as a parent. What's
yes.
happening? My child is actually enjoying life.
Yes, so
Right.
that's, I think, parent driven schools. And there are many schools who decide to waive off entirely formal examinations, perhaps in the primary grades up to grade 5.
Correct.
But they sometimes buckle down under parental pressure where the parent is saying, how would I know whether my
Child
child
is
is learning
studying it
or
all
is
alone.
at a particular learning level? However much we try, and I've had multiple conversations with parents saying, if there is a red flag, we will alert you. Until then, let the child that you both of you can relax. But
Hmm.
as you say, this kind of becomes the sole purpose of a parent's life, that I have to track
How we know?
progress.
Correct. And am I being a good parent? Am I checking out on my child's grades? Right? And we have all of us were aware also, and we said until primary classes, we don't need to have the system of examinations. However, it always came back to if you are in a set of in an ecosystem, there are many multiple schools coming up in the vicinity. The question would be from parents is that school is doing so much,
Yes.
right? Why is it that you don't even have exams? हम तो पता भी नहीं चल रहा हमारा बच्चा क्या कर रहा है. उस बच्चे को देखो कॉलोनी में नीचे गए तो उसको कितना कुछ आते पापा. I said it is not a measure of learning. Examinations is not never a measure of learning. In fact, it is 3 weeks gained in learning, in every term. If you
Yes.
actually back and
Yes.
count,
Coming to the fact that we are
4 weeks
we are
of
testing
learning
more than
time.
we are teaching. If you
Correct.
look at the ratio of testing time versus teaching time, it's really skewed. And I wish we could do away. But I think slowly these things will come, and parents would realize that an absolute perfect score in a grade 3 cumulative test or a unit test is not that important anymore.
So, Radhika, I have a question for you. Would you or your family, anybody in your family, want to put your child into a school where there are no examinations?
Certainly.
Yes. But what are the practical realities?
Yes, so the practical reality is that parents would not want this, and parents would want more and more testing, and parents would want round the clock and round the year testing. So yes, we need to, I think, balance it out. Let's look at some scenarios where we can have alternative forms of exams. Could we look at projects? Could we look at experiential learning assignments? Could we look at a podcast, for example, as an evidence of learning, where a student is told that you summarize all your learnings about gravity and present it to us in the form of a podcast? Maybe the student would do a fantastic job, but then again, it comes to the teachers.
Standard form
And
of measurement.
yes, it would come to the teachers that do I know how to evaluate and assess such an such a
An
test?
assignment, yeah.
When it's in black and white, I know where 1 mark has to be given and 1 mark has to be deducted. But if it's a video, if it's a podcast, if it is a project, how are the rubrics going to be? Would it be a fair assessment? Would also, so much has been said about collaboration and collaborative projects, but we always get flack for using a collaborative project as an evaluation tool, because parents would come back or students would come back and say, I did all the work, but why is she getting the same mark as me in a collaborative project? Or I've had the strangest
all efforts boil down to marks, right?
yes.
Whichever the way we are looking at it. So we need to have non-standard assessments, right? We need to have very individualized, personalized learning paths for children, individualized, personalized assessments also for children.
So perhaps AI will pave the way for this, the way I see it and the way I look at it. AI will perhaps craft a unique path for you for learning for every learner in your class, and will also suggest a rubric for assessment and evaluation. And
Absolutely.
we should take benefit of those tools and strategies for us to make learning more meaningful and more
Okay.
real world.
Keeping the position of the teacher intact in the classroom, and AI cannot replace the human touch. AI will not be able to replace the human touch. We are very, keeping very much in mind that a teacher will never be replaced from her role in a classroom. It might be a shift of role, right? From delivering content to perhaps nurturing creativity in the child, spending more time bringing about collaborative exercise in the classroom, spending more time in doing how she's going to be delivering that content rather than sitting and think, what is it I want to deliver? So it's actually a very empowering tool in the hands of a teacher. A sensitive teacher will be able to exploit this to the fullest advantage, so that childhood becomes more meaningful for the child, rather than sitting through pages and pages of book every evening when you come back from school. And as your grades grow, the higher, I can only see the mountain of books that the child is facing also growing taller and bigger. So I think it's very important for us to start looking at alternatives and solutions. Much has been spoken about the kind of exam stress and worry that children are going through.
Yes.
Fear, then bullying.
In fact, the statistics say that India ranks highest. We have the dubious distinction of being the highest in terms of student suicides, which are related to marks and exams.
And that's only the tip of the iceberg, mind you, Radhika. That's only the tip of the iceberg.
And Maharashtra is leading. The stress levels are so high, and the parent expectations from students are so high. Just for a mark or two, I've had young children come up to me way back in my career when I was starting off as a teacher in grade 5 and grade 6. Ma'am, can you make this 19, 20? Can you just give me a mark somewhere and make it 20 on 20? And I was surprised. I said 19 on 20 is a beautiful percentage, it's 95%. No, my mother will not be happy. And my mother she told me that only if I get 20 will I get this treat, or only then, she's going to take me out. So can you somehow make it 20? So I asked the child, I said, do you realize that you made a mistake? Yes, ma'am, I realize. And I realized that I didn't practice this spelling or this diagram, and that's why I got I got a mark less, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But my mother wouldn't be. I
had this child in class, and school, and at the end of the day, 4 o'clock, it was time for everyone to go home. she would be the last person carrying a bag, and she said, "Ma'am, I just don't want to go home. I don't want to go home because when I go home, I don't like the environment at home. I have to go back and sit and study again, you know." So I used to, it really hurts to see that children are not able to enjoy their childhood because natural curiosity, learning are a natural part of a child's way of living and being, you know. But we are murdering it slowly and surely in the way we are doing things for them and telling them that what we are doing just have to follow because maybe we are older and we are right. However, the biggest problem arises only because of parental expectations and maybe
Societal expectations also to some extent.
also the way the schools are competing with each other to be, you know, on top of the rank bracket. So it's aspirational, parents' aspirations, parents' expectations. A child has to go and meet the parents' expectations with there's only one child and both parents are, you know, working to make it happen for that child. And that child has to kind of come up to the measure and the mark that the parents have set for them. It is truly very sad. Some people actually make it and they think that this is the passport to a good career and good money in the future. Some
But
children
no longer so. I mean,
it's
even
turned on
at the level, of grade 12, which is the senior secondary high stakes exam, entry into a professional college is not based on that score. It's based on a completely different entrance, which that university, whether it is IIT or medical or architecture or any other law program, those universities or those higher education institutes have benchmarked it by putting an entrance test in place, because they realize that these inflated marks sometimes, which boards are also competing with each other.
doubles the agony of the child, no? Which
Yes.
doubles the agony of the child. He
Yes.
has not made it here and he has to make it in another set of examinations. So it again a sad state of affairs for the children, right? For the sake of a few children who are going to make it to these top colleges, as one were to understand them, the rest of them, what happens to the other lot, the entire lot of children who don't make it to these fancy institutions, right? That is a story because beneath one suicide, you can see an entire, it's a, what to say, thing of clinical depression, so to the symptoms of clinical depression. I think one of the biggest culprit here is the coaching classes we hear about coming out from
Yes.
court, right? Where children are huddled into factories of learning and where there's absolutely no time for socio-emotional grooming of these children and more the amount
Think that these young adults are poised to go out into the world, and the 3-4 years of their life are only cramming and cramming and cramming for
Correct.
exams.
for an examination. Right.
That is the sad reality. On the other side,
And
I would-
once, just to complete what you said, once they get into these fancy institutions, right, they have completely burnt themselves out that they are not even fit for performing. They're not performing well also on the first or second or the third year. It takes a lot of while for them to capture themselves back because now they have reached it. That becomes their destination. In fact, that is the starting point of the new journey, you know.
True. They burnt themselves out just to get in. And once they have their, it's like they've
That
just
becomes
completely... Yes.
their destination, you know. For many of them, they've lost it after that. For them, it is no longer an intrinsic motivation because they have arrived, you know. After that is where the big question arises.
We need to, tell them to save themselves up and save the work and pace themselves out so that they would be able to... It's like a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you finish all your energies in the first 100 meters, the rest of the marathon is yet, ongoing. Also, I feel exams also becomes a sad rubric to assess even teacher success. Teachers claim that, I have nurtured so many toppers. I am the star teacher of this school because, my students don't get less than 100, or I have so many 100 marks in my kitty. And that seems to be the one rubric to assess teacher success as well, which is wrong in so many ways, because a teacher's role is not just to produce these toppers, so to say, but to enhance
average of the-
learning, engagement.
For me, it's
facilitation.
always been the class average. If you have been able to raise the average of the class, you know, in a well constructed assessment format, Not a random or a rote learning kind of an assessment format. If a teacher has been able to raise the bar of performance of the entire lot of children, raise the average by a few notches,
But
then I
there again,
know that,
Asha, we are only using marks as this thing. What if there is a teacher whose class average is okay? She hasn't done much work, but every one of her children have produced a beautiful project for the science fair.
exactly. So it has to be an innovative assessment
Yes.
format, not
Yes.
the regular assessment format.
Yes.
Your assessment has to be hands-on activities, like you said, performance-based. You come out and talk about it. You have a debate, you have a declamation, or you have what to say, like you said, create a podcast, or you have a
Yes,
radio
if,
show.
if you've even been able to set them thinking, if
Correct.
you've been able to even spark that thought, and the children are able to take it forward, take those thoughts forward, and the teacher's been able to nurture those thoughts, I think that's also valuable as a good teacher. And unfortunately, that teacher may or may not be among the top performers because her class averages might not be great, but she's really produced good thinkers, or
Correct.
or even she's really produced good human beings. They are respectful, they are on time. Even I would say those are, intangible qualities which we don't measure. But there are some teachers who are very particular that you have to be in good form. You have to sit straight, your posture, your uniform, your handwriting. They pay attention to all these things, and that kind of leaves a mark. And I remember some of my own teachers who insisted on the way we write or the presentation of my paper, and those things have stayed with me forever.
Also developing good readers among the students, and this breeding good thinking in the children. They are able to kind of argue out, debate, or take up questions to a different level, get into critical thinking, working creatively. All these things, we must have one kind of a rubric wherein the teachers are kind of pushing this down in the system, into the system in the classroom. And from there, you are bringing up your students. A project based learning kind of an approach will really, really help to shift the way we are looking at assessments. If that becomes the norm in the school, I used to try it out quite a bit, in all the classes, like they have to have these project-based assessments once in 3 months or once in 6 months. The entire class is doing it. Could be multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. However, that's a very engaging way, and children also enjoy performing like that. And I have noticed that, and several times I was able to document this, was that the average of the class really went up by several notches when we were working like this.
That's really good, and that lends itself to even some kind of action research where a teacher can document that, let me try doing this particular unit in a project-based learning method, and just see how it translates into engaging learning.
So once you've made self-learners of children, right?
Yes.
Some of the topics can be just kind of delegated to them to handle on their own. And
Yes,
the teacher
absolutely.
can take it up in the classroom in a very engaging manner, because now that the content part of it has been taken care of, now how to work around the content and what is it that you want to do with that content becomes a very, very, makes for an interactive classroom,
And a lot has been said and written about flipped learning. So whatever model of flipped learning works for you, I think, there are so many ways, and perhaps in different contexts, it needs to be tweaked and it needs to be altered based on class size, class age, the demographics, and so many things.
Also, I think very, very important, and we cannot stick to the totality of the content that is kind of thrust upon the teacher today, right? The teacher should have the flexibility to kind of trim down the content. She's able to work in depth, go for deeper learning and deeper layers of understanding rather than doing a lot of stuff on the surface.
So there are many layers to this. What you're saying, as heads of institutions, as coordinators, everyone needs to buy into this concept that it doesn't matter that I've finished 5 chapters versus 3 chapters, but were those 3 chapters really meaningful? But yes, it requires a lot of. There are several considerations. I remember having a reader with 21 chapters, out of which maybe 15, 14 or 15 were taught in the class. The others were used for reading assessments. The others were used just as vocabulary, lessons just to get the vocabulary out. But we did receive flack from parents, and they said, why are you recommending a reader with 21 chapters when you have not done the question and answers of all 21? So
I guess parents are also willing to be equal good partners. Only thing is, I think we need to be able to spend that much time talking to the parents and sharing with them why we are doing what we are doing, and how they can parallelly help us out as para teachers. If we are able to show them that, I think we will get the support of parents slowly and surely. But for this, a school must have complete conviction in what it wants to do. You know, if you're saying raising the class average, I'm just assuming one particular case. I'm talking of raising the class average, as a measure of performance of the entire class. Say today the class is at 6.2 and I want to bring it towards 7.5. I've been able to achieve that. I'm just taking these kind of figures as a very arbitrary kind of figures, right? So if my class has made that kind of movement upwards, for a very structured and very creative, innovative, and hands-on, what to say, pedagogical system that we create for the class, I think that will really help. And if we share this with the parents, parents may also join in and help us out in allowing that to happen in the classroom, without asking too many questions.
So how would you say that we can get the buy-in of parents for alternative types of evaluations and assessments? And how would we ensure that we are not railroaded into following,
Yeah,
the set pattern?
I think at the beginning of the year, the school must be very clear how it wants to drive the pedagogy in the classroom. Once that is decided, then also how are they going to drive the assessments in the classroom?
Yes.
Right. And then it's very important that we could talk to parents in every stage. This is what is happening. This is what is happening. This is how your child is performing.
Frequent communication.
Conversations, not just communication. It has to be a conversation, both sides, teachers also talking to the parents, the parents are also trying to understand the school. I think once that buy-in is there, then and it's complete tra la 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 for the teacher and the child, in the interest of
then we won't be considering EXAM as a four-letter word and
Correct.
much to be feared about, or no, it's not such a burdensome period. But right now we are, let's say, we are on the brink of approaching exams, the high stakes exams, and a lot of pressure on these students who are taking the high stakes exams, grade 10, grade 12 board exams across boards, national, international boards. We find that everyone has some piece of advice to give. Even I've had people, the person who sits in the elevator, he will ask you, oh, are you in grade 10? Oh, then you must study hard. Are you in grade 12? You must be studying so many hours. And so how do we shield students from feeling that kind of pressure, that I'm known, and it happens very often that parents kind of take a year off from work, either parent, sometimes both, so that they can help their child, coach them, or make, and up until grade 9 they've had peripherally a very peripheral role, and in grade 10 they expect to be completely immersed into that. It's a very different
control, otherwise their entire mental purpose in life is lost.
And we find that the student really doesn't enjoy this, that, oh my God, my parents are going to be literally breathing down my neck. So how do we shield our students from?
So maybe we should prepare the children from a year ahead, maybe grade 9 onwards, to have a routine and a timetable.
Yes.
That helps. The routine and timetable has to be created by the child.
Yes.
Right? A teacher is a mentor. Teacher should be available to the child at all times, encouraging positive tones. At the same time, telling the student where there needs to be work done and where there needs to be improvement. It cannot be a one-sided thing that I only keep petting you and telling you that no, you need to, you're good, you're capable to it. We need to do all that also. At the same time, we have to sit with the child and tell them that, see, you're capable of better performance. Please put in your best efforts. So a timetable will really work. Scheduling really works. Also small techniques like half an hour of play, right? Staying away from the television, spending family
The cell phone.
and family and television, no? The screen time, right? And spending time with family and friends. So all this has to be adequately balanced out. It cannot be one-sided that you're only studying and you move from one to another. And plus, we have to kind of help the child with some study techniques. I have to learn something, I have to prepare something, then I have to go back and revise it a couple of times. Then once I
Yes.
go ahead in my portion, I must still come back and revise certain
Note
things.
taking. Ever so often, when I'm in the class, even in grade 9 and 10, I kind of have to remind the students that you need to note down what I'm saying. It doesn't come automatically to them. They need to be nudged on note taking skills. That's a real skill. That a lot of the explanation and a lot of what the teacher is saying is going to help you make sense of the text. Because the text has always been there with you. The textbook is there. There is a lot of material. But what the teacher is saying is perhaps going to decode it for you and help you to master the content in a better way. And so, note taking skills. Also, as you mentioned, maintaining a schedule. Once the final exam schedule is out, I used to always, I mean, this is what I followed, and my children also did it to some extent. You start the backward planning that, the last exam, you start studying for it maybe a month or a month and a half before, so that as you move towards the exams, you're studying the first day's paper. Another thing which I feel we must ensure is sleep. Our youngsters are not getting enough sleep at all. They feel that, a completely nocturnal cycle works. They will stay awake till 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. I mean, personally, for me, that doesn't work. But perhaps we're moving towards a nocturnal breed of youngsters.
No, in the interest of well-being, you must have a proper cycle, and you should clock in about 8 hours of good sleep. It's very, very important. Now you can choose your sleep time, whether it's at 8 a.m., 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. But I wouldn't suggest later than 11 because you're still a child, you are still growing up, right? A good sleep hour, a cycle of 8 hours is excellent. And also good food, nourishment. Good nourishment is also very important. You cannot be into junk food and, having all this processed foods and then also wanting to do well in examination, staying up till late night and waking up early in the morning. A good jog will help. A good playtime will help with friends. Family connect also is very important. Parents also should prioritize and we should be sensitive to the fact that the child is going through some amount of, I won't want to use the word stress. However, in the absence of something, the child is going through that phase and the parents also should be able to put aside everything and support the child. However, not making it a very big event in the child's life, yet very subtly supporting the child as it is going through preparation for examination. Keeping the mobile phone aside is a very important thing. Staying away from screen time, excessive TV watching also is very, very critical. Yes, and staying in connect with friends, of course, they are on their WhatsApp groups and they know what's happening in the other with other children. That's very important. That's also an important today.
And peer learning is always very well established. So, sometimes what works is a group of youngsters, a group of students get together and they decide that I'm going to learn chapter 1, I'm going to master chapter 1, and I'm going to teach you.
Teach the others. Yeah.
Teach the other in the group. And that really works because when you have to teach some content, you really feel, you really want to go to the depth of it and ensure that you have complete mastery. And at the same time, when your peers are teaching a difficult concept which you find, which you may have been overwhelmed to study in the classroom, but your peer is teaching you, you are at ease, you're able to interject with questions. They also come out with quick shortcuts to learn formulae, perhaps. So peer learning works. So we study groups, but of course, being mindful that the study group should not become, just a reason to hang out with friends and waste time.
Waste time, yeah.
You must be mindful of that.
From here, I wish to touch upon a very important aspect of schooling, that is coaching tuitions and coaching classes. And all this is because there's an exam at the end of the year and the child has to study. right? And so the student is made to study doubly by going to a coaching class without identifying what is the root of the problem. Why is the child not performing? And after the coaching class, it is the board exams. And after the board exams, it is getting into a college of your choice. And from there, it is up to all these entrance tests that are happening outside,
Yes.
right?
So some more coaching classes and some more.
Class. So it is like, then what is the school doing? If all the learning is happening in the coaching classes, then what is the school doing? Why are we doing this?
No, I think it's very psychological. I know that when my children were growing up, and a lot of my parent group was very curious to know that have I taken admission in some coaching classes or enrolled with some very popular tutors. And when I said no, I'm going to trust my children to do what they if they kind of psychologically railroaded me and said, what if they get less than the percentage that they wanted? What if, just to save a few thousand rupees? I said, it's not about the few thousand of rupees. It's about trusting them and trusting the school that they're doing the right thing. Because as schools mature and progress, the teachers get very good with the content. They also are evaluators for the board level examinations. They come back with a lot of learning. They identify the errors that students may make, and then they decide that, and they share this learning with the students, and they're able to give them authentic information that if you don't write this formula, you may lose the mark in physics. If you don't, if you leave out this point, that's the very critical point. So they come back and they minimize those errors over a period of time, and the students really learn to ace. But it's all psychologically built, and it's all driven by, I would say, the tuition mafia.
Inspiration.
Perhaps this could become the topic of our next podcast, Asha, when we talk about dummy colleges and
The
dummy
malaise of
schools.
the malaise of coaching.
Yes,
in
and
the
dummy
coaching.
schools and dummy colleges. I think that's a bane of our, at least in urban society. I find that it's taking a
Which
very
brings the
shocking.
point that, see, we don't have enough good quality institutions in the tertiary sector. And that is what trickles down to this kind of business in coaching thriving so much. In order to achieve that admission, or in order to be recruited in that organization, right, at the end of my 15, 20 years of educational journey, I have to start making mistakes from today. I want to say mistakes, although I have to make these small attempts on today itself so that I don't lose out, I do well in my 10th, so I get a good, I go do well in my 12th, so that I am selected. And then I get into, I also get good scores in my, my
Entrance exams.
entrance examinations. Then I move on to a college of my choice. From there, I move on to a university program, of good, I think, which is not wrong, which is how the journey should be. But because of that one particular thing at the end of the rainbow, my entire journey has been skewed today, right? And this is stemming out of a certain aspiration, a generational aspiration, the aspiration of parents, and the way the society is moving, everybody wants to be successful, which is again right. It is a right of everybody, each and everyone, to be successful. But in order to be successful, there's a lot of effort that goes behind, There is discipline, there is disappointment also, there is success also. Then there is an entire journey of rigor and hard work, and then bracing it, and sometimes making it, and sometimes not making it. So in all this, I can see a lot of complicated patterns there. Some amount of complicated systems have already gotten established. It's going to be very, very difficult to kind of take them away instantly. It's going to take a lot of time, because it's a huge country and it is spread everywhere. Yeah.
But also coming from the fact that, this generation has already proven that, entrepreneurs or startups are a success model. There is enough. If you have an innovative idea, it can be scaled up for success. Again, very offbeat careers have taken off in a big way. I mean, social media
in very, very big ways.
influencers.
And we have
Social media influencers and content and so many things.
young billionaires who have made it in this generation, very, very young billionaires who have made it in this generation, with a completely, what to say, an idea which generated on the spot and just taken off, and they just built an empire on that, you know.
Ethical hacking, and so many things which were unheard of maybe a decade ago. And I'm sure that our students who are in schools today are going to find their niche, and they're going to find their path wherever they go. But as parents or as teachers or even as educators, our anxieties for them lie in the fact that if you have a good score in your exam, you are kind of taking care of one part of the uncertainty. You're kind of eliminating one this thing of the uncertainty. At least you have a 90% in this. Not to say that the 90% ensures success into what you do. Even a 40% or a 50% might be super successful going forward.
We have sent out so many students in so many batches. We have noticed that several children who are top performers in school are not doing that well in life.
No, not
But
at all.
some children who are backbenchers, but you see them doing very, very well.
Yes.
I mean, I am happy for those who are doing well otherwise also, but I would be happy for everybody who does well, right? And that's what we want all our children to do.
All right. Should we kind of close this?
All right. Okay. Let's do a small saying goodbye. Okay. It was nice discussing this topic, and there's so much more. And we just touched the edge of the entire volcano. All
Yes.
right. So maybe there will be more offshoots of different topics coming out of this major.
Yes, and I think I'm looking forward to see how this podcast of ours is taking shape as we move into the space of sharing our experiences and deliberating and having conversations about pertinent topics. I think we would be inviting a few guests,
Yes.
some of our
Experts, yes.
peers, some experts, some
And some
faculty.
practicing teachers. I want to get teachers on board.
Yes.
I also would like them to come with any case studies which call for a conversation.
That's the
you know?
real learning.
Yeah.
As much as workshops and as much as strategies and tools are concerned, unless you are contextualizing it and able to use it and see a use case for it, it's not going to be very effective. So, for all our listeners and all our viewers, we have lots more in store for you. We
want to see you on this side, and we want to see you also on this side.
Yes, we hope to be having more of such conversations. We just, as Asha mentioned, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many things that education is such a vast ocean of issues, topics, concerns. Everybody has something to say about it, whether or not they are directly connected with it. Everyone has something to say about the education system, about teachers, about schools, about principals. So there's lots more to come.
Open the forum for more people to participate in these conversations. All right. Thank you, Radhika.
All right. Thank you, Asha. Bye-bye.